Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing a corporate autopsy on an absolute, unstoppable tech titan. For the longest time, Nokia wasn't just leading the pack, they were completely untouchable. But, in tech, nothing lasts forever. Let's get right into it.
$250 billion. Just wrap your head around that number for a second. Back in the early 2000s, Nokia didn't just compete in the mobile phone market, they literally were the market. By 2007, they're moving an insane 400 million devices a year. Every second mobile phone sold on the entire planet had Nokia stamped across the top. We're talking a massive 40% global market share and a valuation over $250 billion. An absolute juggernaut.
Which brings us to the core mystery we're unpacking today. How exactly does the undisputed king of mobile tech lose the whole shebang almost overnight? Was it just Apple's sheer brilliance, or did Nokia systematically destroy itself from the inside out? Okay, let's dive into this.
Well, to really grasp the sheer scale of this fall, we kind of need to map out their century-long rise. Because Nokia didn't even start as a tech company. Founded way back in 1865 in Finland, they were originally a humble paper mill. Crazy, right? Over the decades, they morphed into an industrial giant making rubber boots and electrical cables. But in the late 1980s, leadership made a massive, high-stakes gamble. They dumped their traditional businesses and bet the house on cellular communication, and it paid off, big time. They became the absolute pioneer of the GSM digital network, eventually surpassing Motorola in '98 to become the world's top mobile maker, riding high all the way to that peak in 2007.
Section 1. The iPhone Earthquake.
So picture this. It's January 2007. Steve Jobs is on stage in San Francisco, and human technology is altering forever. The original iPhone drops, ditching the keypad for a touchscreen. But here's the thing. On paper, Nokia's flagship N95 completely annihilated the original iPhone. The Nokia had 3G, GPS, a stellar battery, expandable storage, the works. The iPhone, it cost a whopping $499, the battery was terrible, it didn't have 3G, and it couldn't even send a picture message. So looking strictly at this hardware data, Nokia completely dismissed Apple. And that dismissal led to some truly fatal hubris. Nokia's CEO at the time publicly brushed the threat off entirely, literally saying, "Apple is not a threat to our core business. It is a luxury gimmick." Talk about missing the mark. Nokia fiercely believed hardware was king. What they tragically failed to see was that the game had changed. It wasn't about physical specs anymore. It was shifting entirely into a war of software platforms.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Symbian software trap.
See, while Nokia was popping champagne over their hardware, their true Achilles heel was festering in their software. We need to talk about Symbian, because this is the root of the collapse. Symbian was Nokia's operating system, but it was built for a completely different era, an era of tiny, non-touch screens and zero memory. It was this monstrous tangle of complex, rigid code. So when Apple introduces this buttery smooth, modern touchscreen interface, trying to update Symbian to match it was, well, an absolute nightmare. It was a paralyzed, outdated architecture. And to put that paralysis into perspective, if a developer wanted to code a new app or feature for Apple's iOS, it'd take a few days. Easy. To do that exact same task on Nokia Symbian, up to 2 grueling months. Nokia had completely lost its agility. Any swift response to the iPhone was mathematically and practically impossible. But, bad code is usually a symptom of a bad environment. Inside Nokia, the culture had turned incredibly toxic. First off, massive bureaucracy. Middle managers were fighting turf wars instead of innovating. Secondly, there was a pervasive culture of fear. The engineers down in the trenches knew Symbian was a total disaster, but everyone was way too terrified to tell the executives. And third, they had this wildly fragmented focus, spreading their already fragile software across dozens of different phone models just to keep carriers happy. It was a mess. Now, while Nokia is effectively suffocating on its own complexity, Google quietly throws the industry a massive free life raft. They acquired Android and released it as an open-source modern OS. Competitors like Samsung, HTC, and LG saw the writing on the wall, ditched their clunky systems, and jumped on the Android bandwagon immediately. But Nokia? They stubbornly refused. They stayed on the sinking Symbian ship, totally convinced their past dominance made them unsinkable.
Section 3. The burning platform.
Fast forward to 2010. Nokia's stock has plummeted by over 60%. Desperation sets in. They bring in a new CEO, Stephen Elop, and he issues this internal memo that's become legendary for its brutal honesty. He wrote, "We are standing on a burning platform. We have fallen behind, we have missed trends, and we have lost time." It was a shocking wake-up call. The denial was finally over, but man, the clock had basically run out. So, following that memo, Nokia is standing at a massive crossroads with basically 3 survival options. Option 1, double down, try to fix Symbian, and push their experimental MeeGo software. Option 2, swallow their massive pride, adopt Android, and instantly get millions of modern apps. Or option 3, partner up with Microsoft and adopt the entirely unproven Windows Phone OS. Well, in February 2011, Nokia rolled the dice on a fatal gamble. They killed Symbian and went all in on Windows Phone. Now, to be fair, the new Nokia Lumia phones were stunning. Incredible industrial design, insane 41-megapixel cameras like on the Lumia 1020, but they slammed headfirst into a brick wall, the app gap. The Windows Phone store was a ghost town. Crucial apps that users literally demanded, Instagram, Snapchat, Google services, were completely missing. And it doesn't matter how gorgeous your phone is if it doesn't have the apps people want. Users wouldn't buy the phone, so developers wouldn't build the apps. Nokia was trapped in a classic death spiral. Section 4. The final collapse. Let's trace this catastrophic descent. In 2008, Android launches and explodes globally. By 2010, Nokia's stock crashes 60%. Skip to 2013, and that dominant 40% market share we talked about completely evaporated, down to less than 3%. And then, in September 2013, the unthinkable happens. The company that basically invented modern mobile communication threw in the towel. They sold their entire mobile division to Microsoft for $7.2 billion, which sounds like a lot until you remember they were worth over $250 billion just a few years prior. Ouch.
When the sale was finalized, Nokia's management stood in front of the press, literally choking back tears, and delivered this quote: "We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost." It's incredibly tragic, honestly, but it perfectly highlights a terrifying reality in business. You can do everything right according to the old rulebook, build tough phones with great batteries, and still completely fail when the fundamental paradigm shifts underneath you.
Now, quick side note, Nokia didn't just vanish into thin air. Today, they're actually a quiet giant in 5G telecommunication equipment and enterprise networking. They survived the smartphone collapse by pivoting all the way back to their roots in B2B network infrastructure. So they're still a massive, successful company. They're just powering the networks behind the scenes instead of sitting in our pockets.
Section 5. Lessons from the fall. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, this autopsy leaves us with 3 absolute golden rules. Number 1, complacency kills. Being the undisputed leader today guarantees absolutely nothing about tomorrow. Nokia's success created a blind spot the size of a planet. Number 2, ecosystems beat hardware every time. It's not just about the glass and metal in your hand, it's about the software and the developers powering it. And number 3, adapt or die. Paradigm shift at lightning speed in tech. Clinging to old strategies just out of stubborn pride, that's just financial suicide.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Looking at this whole crazy timeline, what do you think was Nokia's absolute biggest mistake? Was it that toxic culture of fear? Was it completely writing off the iPhone? Or, think about this, if they had just swallowed their pride and jumped on the Android bandwagon back in 2011, would they still be the king of mobile today? Let that sink in. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.